Hey, this is Evan with Simple Cell Central Florida. We're here for our monthly Q&A. It's December, heading into the end of the year, um, and just wanted to make an introduction. Simple Cell Central Florida's mission is to bring transparency and accountability to distressed home sales. We buy properties throughout Central Florida currently. That's Orlando, Tampa, Titusville, Orange County, Hillsborough, Pinellas County, Brevard, Seminole, Osceola, and everything in between. We specialize in buying properties that have issues such as excessive repairs, probates, um, liens, judgments, foreclosures, anything that isn't typical in a transaction, in buying or selling a house. We specialize in taking care of that. We also do list properties. So for people that have a distressed property, and they aren't in a rush to sell, we can list that property for you and work to take care of issues, and help you manage your distressed home sale. So with that being said, we'll get into the first question. I think we have 10 or so questions here, that we'll go through. The first question: what is a distressed property? So, as I was just saying, we typically define distressed as a property that has excessive repairs, um, or legal issues like probate, liens, judgments, foreclosures, anything of that nature, or disputes, anything that brings complexity to a home sale is what we consider a distressed property. It doesn't necessarily have to be in bad condition. It may just be a property that has complexity to be able to sell it. Maybe there's a lien on it. Maybe there's um, ownership by a person that's deceased. Maybe there's ownership by a person that doesn't want to sell, but you and other people need to sell your ownership in the property. Whatever the case may be, we define all of those things as distressed, because it makes the situation complex and it makes the situation confusing for the average home seller. So that's how we like to think about distressed property. The next question: so how can I get rid of my distressed home? Um, Really, there are a couple options. You can go out and find someone to try to buy it. I was talking about, distress mean that there's legal issues on the property. If there's legal issues on the property, a lot of buyers will not take on the property. Then you may have to get an attorney involved to take care of the legal issues. But so one way is to go out and find buyers, and then a second way is to work with an agent that specializes in distressed property cases. Um, the benefit of working with a specifically a distressed property buyer is they'll they'll specialize in cases of distressed property, and they'll be used to working with attorneys on legal issues, working with HOAs on HOA foreclosure issues, HOA lien issues, working with estoppels, things of that nature. Um, so you really want to be specific about, if you're trying to sell your distressed property, who you find that they specialize in those types of things, or what will end up happening. And what we see a lot is um, buyers that don't know how to handle those situations, and you go through 5 buyers and none of them are able to close on the property because they're not used to dealing with those types of situations and do not want to figure out how to deal with those situations. So we see that a lot. So make sure that whoever you work with, whether it be Simple Sale or another company, that they do in fact specialize in dealing with distressed properties. The next question: how does a lien work? So a lien is essentially put on a property, and whenever it is sold or changes hands, um, the title company and the underwriters for the title insurance will see on the title commitment that there is a lien on the property, and that company or that person is wanting to get paid for what they believe to be money owed. It can be a mechanics lien, it can be an IRS lien. Mechanics lien is when contractor or a vendor of some kind, let's say you buy doors for your house and you don't pay for them, a vendor will put mechanics lien on the property for their money owed for selling you those doors that you never paid for or never paid them back for, things of that nature. So they'll put it on the property in hopes that they eventually get paid back if the property ever does sell. I would say definitely a majority of houses that we deal with have some form of a lien. Typically what we see are liens in the form of judgments owed to the county or city in which it's in. That may be for things as simple as utilities to something bigger as lawyer fees, or even IRS liens. So essentially a lien just protects or helps a person or company feel that they'll get paid back eventually for what work they believe they completed. And liens are negotiable in some instances. So if a contractor wants to be paid back for work completed and you think he charged you too much, so that's why you didn't pay him, maybe he's charging you $10,000, maybe you can negotiate those liens down to $7,000 or $8,000 or $5,000, I don't know. But that is possible. But some liens are not, like IRS liens typically are not negotiable. So yeah, that's essentially the gist of how it works. So we'll go on to the next question. Do tax liens go away after you sell a property? So tax liens, in almost all cases, when we close on a property, those tax liens will be taken care of. They'll be paid before closing on the property, and they won't go with you, and they won't be attached to the property. Typically, depending on what type of tax liens, if it's property tax liens, they'll be paid out at close and taken out of your disbursement for taxes owed that you haven't paid. In very rare cases, we would buy a property that did have tax liens for whatever reason, but usually those are going to be paid and they will not follow you. Typically, tax liens will attach to the house and they won't attach to you personally. So if you do sell a house with tax liens, they will not travel with you to the next property you buy, and they won't attach to you personally. So they almost in all situations are attached to the property. Okay, next question. Should I sell my house as is or fix it up? So we get this question a lot. I talk with people a lot about if they should sell their property as is or fix it up. And it really depends on your expertise in rehabbing properties. So if you're confident in your ability to rehab a property, or you know people that can rehab a property, I would always suggest that you fix it up yourself and then sell it, because you're going to get more money. But the problem typically becomes, and what we see is, we'll buy properties from people who tried to fix it up themselves and they got bad contractors. People they thought they could trust and they couldn't, they charged them too much, didn't complete the work, et cetera, et cetera. So make sure, if you're going to take the journey of fixing up your property, that you're confident in your ability to make sure it gets completed with trustworthy contractors, because it can be pretty bad. We've seen people get taken advantage of when they try to fix up their property to get more money out of it, and things go bad. They can be out a lot of money with very little work completed. So it really depends on your expertise. So that would be the deciding factor on whether you fix it up or just sell it as is. So I would say for the majority of people, selling the property as is going to be a lot less stressful and easier on the person, even though you will definitely get less for it, and you won't probably net the same amount of money. You have to think about, if things go bad when you're fixing it up, do you want to take that risk? Do you feel confident that you can get it completed and get the house sold? So it really depends on the person's situation. So I found out the home I inherited needs probate. What should I expect? So we deal with a ton of probate properties, and typically, sometimes the people know, and then sometimes it is we're under a purchase contract and we go to buy the property and we realize that it does need a probate, and the seller didn't even know. So when we do get those situations, we're dealing with, I think, 2 currently. You should expect that it's going to take anywhere from 30 to 90 days to go through the courts if it's a simple probate, but we've had probates go for a year. But in most situations, it's 30 to 90 days, depending on how complicated the probate is. If you were to work with simple sell on your probate, you would be working with our attorneys in-house, and essentially everything would be taken care of, and we would just give you progress updates and ask you for documentation as needed. If you want to do a probate yourself, you'll go find a probate real estate lawyer that specializes in that, and they'll walk you through the process. So that's really your 2 different options. And you typically cannot sell the house. You cannot close on the sale of the house until the probate. You get a motion for sale of real estate or real property approved by the courts, which is late in the probate process. And at that point, typically the personal representative will be able to sell the property through a personal representative's deed. So that's, a very high level explanation on how the process would work. Next question: how do you handle taxes on home sales? This is an interesting one because it's funny that, like, without us explaining to the client how taxes work and that they're going to be paid, like, people don't really think about that money coming out. So for easy explanation, let's say let's say you sell the property at the end of June. Let's say you sell a property July 1st. So you've owned it for 6 months of the year. So when you sell that property, if you've already paid the taxes for the year, then you will be reimbursed 1/2 of the taxes that you paid, because you won't own that property. Let's say you close on July 1st. You won't own that property for the last half of the year. So let's say you paid $1,000 in taxes, you'll be reimbursed $500 in taxes because you paid out for the year. Let's say you haven't paid taxes for the year and you're late, and it's July 1st and you close on a house. You're going to have to, from your proceeds, let's say you are selling the house for $100,000, you're then going to be $500 is then going to be taken out of your proceeds to pay for the taxes that you hadn't paid yet, because you, as a seller, will always cover the taxes for the period of time in which you own the property. So if you own the property for the first half of the year, you're obligated to pay those. And a lot of people don't think about that, and we try to disclose that very early in the process, that those are costs. Most people understand, but some people don't, and it's an expense that they're not expecting. So there can be confusion, but it's something that if you own the property, you're obligated to pay those taxes. And then for the rest of the year, the buyer, if it's simple sale or someone else, would pay those taxes. The next question, do you have any tips or advice for selling a house that needs repairs? I think this is pretty similar to an earlier question. The tips, really, so, I mean, the easiest things to do that that can help is just making sure the house is clean, that junk is removed, the house is clean. Very obvious stuff like cosmetic. Really easy stuff is just painting walls. It can give the house a better appeal, which maybe it costs you $1,000 to repaint, but it may bring you $5,000 because of the feel of the house. Maybe the walls are yellow and you repaint them to a neutral color. It could quite possibly bring you a lot more for the house than what it costs. And maybe it's $1,000 and it brings you $5,000 more or something of that nature. So even though it does maybe need repairs, taking little steps like that can help you with bringing out more equity in the property on a sale. It's just small things like that. If there's junk around inside and outside the property, take $1,000 and clean the property. Hire someone to clean the property, and junk, the stuff that needs to be thrown away. That maybe they cost you $1,000, but it can save you $5,000. You can bring you $5,000 more just because the appeal of the house is better. So that's really the biggest one and the easiest way to bring out more equity in the property. Next question. Is it possible to sell a distressed home fast? Yes, of course it is possible. It depends on why it's distressed. If it's distressed for legal issues, sometimes those can take a while. But there's also situations where it looks like we might need a probate, and we end up figuring out how to not have to do a probate. So distressed properties can definitely be sold fast. And probably the fastest sales are ones that it just needs repairs, and the seller doesn't want to do it, but you can absolutely sell distressed property quickly, as long as there aren't some outstanding complex legal issues. And of course, if there are, you just need to work with a company that's used to dealing with those types of issues and can work through those issues quickly, because you can get a buyer that hasn't worked with those issues, and maybe it takes twice as long to get through it, but just because they don't know how to handle those situations. So you want to be very cautious in who you pick to close the property with, whether it be an agent or a buyer. Next question, what are the typical closing costs? So this is a good one, because an easy rule of thumb is 2%. So if you're selling a house for $100,000, typical closing costs will be 2% of that. Now, in almost all of our transactions that we do, we pay closing costs, and I think most home buyers, and more specifically cash home buyers, they pay closing costs as well. So it's common. Now, if you're selling your property on the market with an agent, if let's say you listed with Simple Sale Realty, you would pay closing costs, and those are typically 2%. If you hire an agent, they'll typically charge 5 to 6% total, which is 2.5 or 3% per agent, one for the listing agent and one for the buyer's agent. So a good rule of thumb is 7 to 8% of the total cost if you're listing the property will come out of your proceeds. Which that may sound like a lot, but if you are lucky to have time on your side and you list the property, you're almost in all situations going to get more money for it if you remain patient and wait for offers to come in. So yeah, so typical closing costs, 2% for closing costs, and then 5 to 6% for commissions. Next question. I inherited my dad's house and he was a bit of a hoarder. How can I sell his home? So for hoarder houses that we've bought, we'll just buy the property as is. We've had very complex situations. We once had a house that was a probate and a hoarder house, and there was a biohazard issue in which someone died in the property and wasn't found for a few weeks. So we bought that property as is, no contingencies. I think that one in particular, we bought with no inspection period. We did 1 or 2 walkthroughs, bought the property as is, did the probate, and closed on the property as is, no changes. And we had a biohazard team clean it up, and we had a team clear out the property. So you can absolutely sell that property. I don't know how many people would go to those types of links if the property it's a complex situation. I know we do. Simple Sale does. I don't know how many other buyers do deal with that. I know other cash buyers will buy a hoarder house, assuming that there's no other complexities on top of it. But besides that, you're not going to be able to list it in most situations. You're going to want to do an outright cash sale to a distressed home buyer. So I think that was the last question. I know that was the last question. If there's any other questions, I don't think I've seen any comments with questions. Let's see, Dante commented, but I don't see any questions. If there are no other questions, we'll go ahead and close this one out. Once again, this is the December Q&A. Appreciate people who are watching this and who view this. We always upload it on Facebook and on the website and on various social media. You can reach us at 321-732-6477, or you can go to our website, simplesalescentralflorida.com. Our mission, as I said at the beginning, is to bring transparency and accountability to distressed home sales, whether that be we buy your property, we clear up your lien issues, or we list your distressed property. We want the client to have a transparent experience with an accountable company that will work with them to get them through a stressful situation. So once again, you can reach us 321-732-6477 or the simplesalescentralflorida.com and put in your information, whether it's you, whether it's a family member, whether it's a friend. You can input that information and we will do our best to help you out with your situation. All right. Thanks.